Hi, Iness.
Hi, Theresa.
Thank you for joining me for my little talk.
I'm elated.
So, I was thinking about this conference we have coming up and on IFS and eating disorders, and I'm thinking about what I might want to talk about when I talk for a few minutes. Um, and this next week is Eating Disorder Awareness Week.
Yes.
I got catapulted back to spring of 1990. No, it was February of 1990, actually, Kansas State
Mm-hmm.
University. And I don't know if it was the very first Eating Disorder Awareness Week of all time. Like, I don't know if that was I think it was ANAD actually that was doing it at that time. Anorexia nervosa and associated disorders. They're still in
Hmm.
Chicago. Um, but it definitely was the first one at K-State. And I was thinking about the panel of people I got together to do that. And so it immediately like put me back to when you and I first met in 1985 and kind of like all the different changes that have happened in the field since I went through recovery, since I met you. So I was just kind of thinking about all of that before we got on the call. So if you want to just kind of maybe introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and kind of the work you've done with eating disorders, just a little bit, and then and maybe a little bit about um, the talk that you and I originally began to speak about for this conference and how important I felt it was to have um, your voice there. And then maybe a little bit about the panel that's going to happen.
Okay, sounds great. So I am a registered nurse with a master's degree in adult mental health and psychiatry. And I started actually, my introduction to actually working with eating disorders came way back in the 1980s, like 83, when the hospital that I worked at decided they were going to open the first inpatient eating disorders unit anywhere in our region here in the Midwest. Um, Prior to anything like that being available, you had become very ill with anorexia or bulimia, you'd end up on a medical unit in the hospital. So I had the experience of caring for people that got admitted to the hospital. And by and large, nurses didn't really enjoy taking care of people with eating disorders because they struggled with just the basics to get them back to a healthy enough place to go home. But I was fascinated by it and I loved it. I kind of was always a psych nurse at heart. And as well as being really very intrigued by helping people recover from whatever was going on with them that brought them to the hospital. So I signed on to do that. And I was sent with the program to California to just learn all about eating disorders. And we built the first 12-bed inpatient unit there in Kansas City. So here I go, plunged into this world with learning so much. I learned so much about, I think I came to the table with a lot of my own experience having helped me to really understand the resilience of the human spirit and the things that we can go through and triumph from. So I went in not feeling like this was an illness or a disease or a problem people couldn't come out on the other side healthy and whole. I really, really believed in the capacity of people to come to understand themselves, understand why they struggle with what they struggle with, and to come out on the other side healthy and whole. So that's kind of the beginnings. And in the course of that, I actually worked under a great team that was very progressive in their thinking, and nurses weren't just pill pushers, but in fact, we were really integrated into the therapeutic world of helping people with what really wasn't about food and weight as much as it was about the heart of what was uh, eating away at them, so to speak, I guess you could say. And anyway, so I just learned a whole lot. I was involved in every aspect of that therapeutic process. Um, and I think when you initially, um, we have been through experience of this, as you said, with your own process of recovery, but also then in working together in the field for many, many years in St. Louis. So when you called me recently and let me know about the work you're going to do with this workshop, I I just was elated because you tapped into something that has always been a part of my experience working with eating disorders. In 1984, I stepped into a world of definitely a world with very, 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 very few, of any, uh, people around me that, in either professionally or in treatment, that were people of color of any type. Anybody that was not, basically white and struggling with an eating disorder or professionally helping people with eating disorders. So it was very intriguing for you to ask me what that was like for me to be in that world, because there wasn't probably a day ever that I've worked with eating disorders that I wasn't very aware of the contrast. I was always kind of juxtaposition between the amazing people that I was having the privilege of working with, and in some way being a process of their healing, a part of the process of their healing. But I was always very conscious of the fact that I knew people who were African Americans who whose experience was very, very similar in terms of what is often at the heart of an eating disorder, a struggle with an eating disorder, and that is trauma. And trauma is trauma is trauma is trauma. And the other thing that I was always acutely aware of is that as I began to learn more about trauma and learn about historical trauma and the impact of historical trauma and the impact of what we called often legacy burdens. And I'm going to be speaking up, sharing information with an audience that I'm sure I don't have to define any of that.
Yeah.
And so, in the context of any kinds of disturbance in people of color that struggle with any issues around food, I think that the context of trauma is not just whatever they've experienced in their lifetime here on earth, but the historical trauma that impacts especially African Americans in America, and is in as oh, wow, as Bessel says, the body, the body never forgets, and it generation after generation, many of the traumas that African Americans have experienced are in our cells and so viscerally there. And I would often see people having lived experiences in their lives, and I knew this person and that person and the other person who had lived through very similar traumas, who had lived through a wide range across the spectrum of from the trauma that perfectionism can bring about in a person's life to the traumas of growing up in a world that doesn't see you and in a world that actually sees you in a very negative context, especially in terms of the body itself, in terms of the very skin on your body, the very color of your skin, just so many things that I knew were the layers beneath the layers beneath the layers of what it's like. So that's kind of what really intrigued me about being able to join this panel.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. And I'm so grateful and honored to just like sit here with you right now and listen, and to you talk, and like I want to know more. I know
Yeah.
know more. Um, and I think that you being on the panel and being able to talk about not only your experience being a person of color in a you know, a pride from, I can't have said that word, but a field that's primarily white, and also what it was like for you to see how people of color were treated in and out of treatment, maybe just think it's invaluable and
And
essential.
initially, Theresa, I would say from the early years of my experience working in the field, it wasn't that there were many people of color in treatment, quote unquote. And there's many, many barriers, that are, reasons behind why people of color would not necessarily be seen in treatment in those early stages. When I was learning so much and exposed to so much that helped me even grow personally, you kind of can't work in this field and not go grow personally and professionally. You cannot. So, um, I hope that I can help delve into some of what those barriers are. Again, many of them wrapped in layers of historical and legacy trauma. But I am also very aware that some of those very same circumstances, African American people in general in America have had to learn to dig deep into our own resilience. And so when you ask me what do I feel has changed, one thing I feel has changed is that more and more people of color definitely understand that it's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to explore like what drives your own personal struggles. And so I see more and more people, African American women and men, that are willing to just have the courage to take those steps.
Yeah. Well, I think the panel is going to be invaluable. And again, I'm just so grateful you're going to be a part of it.
I'm excited, very excited. So,
All right. So we'll see you here in a few weeks.
very few weeks. I'm just looking forward to it so much. And I definitely am looking forward to learning and growing by being a part of the conference in the first place. So thank you so much for thinking of me, Theresa.
Of course, of course. Thank you. All right. So let's see if I can